Good morning, everybody. Matt Williamson here from Pop Goes the 60s with a short addendum on my Spirit video. That video has done very well, and thank you for all your comments and questions and suggestions. When I do a lot of my 60s videos, I always, when we get into the mid-70s and the careers of these people, I tend to summarize very briefly. My Spirit video was getting a little bit long, I thought, to begin with. And I did omit several things. So there was a lot of people who are big Randy California fans out there, big Spirit fans, say, hey, you didn't mention this or that. So I'm just going to quickly go over a couple of things to fill in some gaps in the post-1971 era of Spirit. And one of the albums I didn't mention, and probably should have, was the solo album by Randy California in '72 called Captain Copter and the Fabulous Twirly Birds. Now this was one of his only real, solo albums in terms of solo and name. This is with Charlie Bundy, Noel Redding, and Fuzzy Knight, both playing bass. And technically, it is a solo album, although Cass does play on a couple of tracks. And this is one of the standout tracks on the album. Okay, by 1973, Cassidy, as I mentioned earlier in my first video on Spirit, he had a cocaine problem. And I think this hampered his career and who he could play with, who he couldn't play with, and his just overall recording. But in '73, this is an example. He did an album called The Adventures of Captain Copter and Commander Cassidy in Potato Land. Now this was canceled by Epic Records, and I probably would have canceled it based on the title alone. But in this case, it was eventually released in 1981 on Rhino, and that was just one of the stumbling blocks in his career. He picked it up in 1975-76. I brought both of these albums up in the video, and that was Spirit of '76 and Son of Spirit. So the first song, Sunrise, was from Spirit of '76, and then the last track was from Son of Spirit. So very quality albums. People in the comments said how much they valued both of these records. And I've always considered these albums to be Randy California's solo projects. Even though his stepfather Cass is on these, it essentially is it's a Randy California tour de force. To call something Spirit, I really think you gotta have 3 or 4 members in the band. And that did happen in the Farther Along album, which came out, I believe, in '76, with 4 of the 5 members. Jay Ferguson did not participate, but Mark Andy's brother Matt replaced him. Now, Matt Andy's, as I mentioned before, was another musician. He was in JoJo Gunn, and he's always seems to be on hand to fill in when needed, and he did so in this case on rhythm guitar on the Farther Along album. Now, unfortunately, that album didn't lure Jay Ferguson back into the studio with the band, although he did play a reunion show in Santa Monica. And this show is notable not just because it was a Spirit reunion, a full-fledged reunion, and it was, I guess, received very well, even though the band didn't really rehearse. Ferguson was leery about that. California and Cassidy suggested we don't need rehearsal. Believe me, you always need rehearsal. So what ended up happening in the end was their friend Neil Young comes on stage with his guitar to jam with them at the end of the show, drunk as a skunk, and California basically shoves him off the stage, and that was the end of the show. So unfortunately, kind of a strange ending. I wish we had that on film. Now in '77, we have the album Future Games. And this is what they call a collage pop album. Now, I always thought that California, with his style of play, this fluid guitar playing, it lended itself to these kind of psychedelic freakouts that he was doing during this period, which was kind of unusual for the time. But let me just read to you some of the comments by some of the critics here on the Future Games album. This is Paul Lester of The Guardian. Lester called it a masterpiece that, despite its canny appreciation of late 1970s zeitgeist, failed to grip the public. He opined that Monkey See, Monkey Do, China Doll, and Freak Out Frog resemble top 10 smashes in an alternative reality where Todd Rundgren was a true star, although only a madman or a genius would throw away a melody as sublime as So Happy Now. Still, that's probably why California was never that popular, more of a delusional populist. It also explains why Future Games still sounds like the future 36 years on. So that's really high praise for an album that gets almost no recognition at all. So, yeah, that album reminds me of what I view Randy California is, and I've always viewed some of these quasi-spirit albums as his solo projects. And I think he did himself a disservice by not branding himself as Randy California. He had the chops. He could have been another Jeff Beck. That's how good he was. That's how unique he was. And this quote really explains it well, that he still sounds like the future 36 years on. That's California in a nutshell. So I wanted to give Randy a little bit of an extra shout here. And there was a bit of a homage to him and trying to do right by him with the whole Stairway to Heaven fiasco. Those of you who know about the lawsuit between the song Taurus from the first album and Stairway to Heaven, well, this lawsuit didn't really kick in until the 21st century, and there's videos on this. I won't go into the details of this, but generally speaking, when you're going to go up against Zeppelin, you're going up against a mighty big bankroll. And that's not to say that I'm a little bit on the fence with that guitar intro that was used for Stairway to Heaven. And obviously, Zeppelin is known for lifting stuff and songs and really building off of them more in ways that other people have done it, in more thieving ways, I guess you'd say. The better example would be Black Water Side, which Page took for Black Mountain Side. Carbon copy of the guitar arrangement of Bert Jansch. I'll talk about that in a future video. But anyway, this Taurus thing, I think they were trying to, it would have been a vindication for California after his death in 1997, drowning in the ocean, saving his son. So anyway, I think the lawsuit still brought attention to his work, to that song, and to Spirit. So in a sense, that went okay. That went as planned. And Randy California got a little bit of a bump, I think, because of that. Now, somebody had mentioned that I had forgot to mention the album Spirit of '84, which came out in 1984. Actually, I did mention that, but I mentioned it by its alternative title, The 13th Dream. So I think The 13th Dream was the European title, whereas Spirit of '84 was the US title. It's an album I don't have. And then there was another Spirit album in name only, Tent of Miracles 1990. That's another California Cassidy workout. I've actually not heard that album. So let's just briefly go through some of the other members of the band here, because they all did well. John Locke being the lowest profile. He stayed in the music industry, played for a number of years with Nazareth. Jay Ferguson took time off after JoJo Gunn and did some studio work, worked with Joe Walsh quite a bit, and he started a solo career. He had 5 albums, notably the top 10 song Thunder Island, followed up by the follow-up hit was Shakedown Cruise. Those are both like 1977-78 period. After which he kind of went behind the camera or into the studio to do soundtrack work. And his most notable, I guess, success would be the theme song to The Office, which he did. He also contributed or wrote like 15 other feature films. So he really did well and was quite popular and well renowned for that work. In fact, The Office, that theme, won him the 2007 Film and Television Music Award for Best Score for a Comedy Television Program. So he's got some awards along the line as well. Now, perhaps the most interesting solo or career after Spirit was Mark Andes. After getting thrown out of the band he formed with his best friend Jay Ferguson and brother Matt Andes, he got thrown out of JoJo Gunn. And he eventually moved out to Colorado, where there was another kind of a collection of musicians there, and that's where he formed Firefall with ex-Flying Burrito Rick Roberts. And that was in about 1974. So Firefall started a good run from 74 as kind of a soft rock band. The other notable member in that group was Michael Clark, formerly of the Byrds. So you get this kind of minor supergroup label attached to this group. They had a couple big hits, You Are the Woman being the biggest. Now for Andes, he got even into a bigger band, and that's the version of Heart in the 80s. So the 80s version of Heart was kind of the revamped Heart. Obviously, none of the 70s rock bands were able to carry that sound into the 80s. Not possible. If you didn't change your sound, you were done. Heart changed their sound, updated the band with Andes. Howard Lee stayed in the band, and Denny Carmassi, formerly of Montrose. This started that hair band era of Heart, and Andes was a part of the group that had 2 number ones and many top 10s. Alone was number 1, and I can't remember the name. These Dreams. And they had other top 10s songs as well, and some very popular albums. I saw him many times touring with Heart, and Heart was just a huge touring attraction at the time. So he got a 10-year run with a very successful group. So anyway, I was really surprised that there really isn't a lot of information on Spirit as a whole. So far as I know, there's no biography. There aren't a lot of magazine articles written about them. I've looked. And I think that's why this video, my Spirit video, was getting a good amount of views, because I think people want to know about them. They want to know more about the music. I think the fact that Spirit isn't more well known has to do with the fact that they are more of a jazzy group. Jazz has always been a bit of a niche, and I think it frightened some people off. And even in the 60s, there's so much competition, so much to listen to. Spirit, those who knew them still love them. And I got a lot of comments in the video, hey, I knew a couple of their hits, but I didn't really know much about this group. So that's what this channel is for, and I want to continue to bring these bands and show their history and play their music, so you get a good feel for not only how good they were or what kind of music they brought to the world, but also their history and how they fit within the perspective and within the industry at that time, and where things kind of wound up. Because most of these bands, as you know, everybody has their run and then it's done. And some bands can't even really control that. It's controlled for them by us, really, and by what's going on in the industry and how styles and trends change. And Spirit just fell into that period that they just couldn't take any further. And there was, bands, the nature of bands and creative forces oftentimes do collide. And there's, like I said, it works for a while until it doesn't, and then we're left with what worked, I guess. So in that respect, I think Spirit left us with some really good material. And those of you, many of you said that you hadn't heard a lot of the Model Shop soundtrack. So if you are looking for more Spirit, that would be the thing to look into, which I find one of their best works. But all their work is very consistent. So anyway, that is my addendum on Spirit. And I've got plenty more band histories coming. Thank you for all the support. Thank you for many new subscribers subscribed because of the last Spirit video. And I look forward to grabbing many more of you here on Pop Goes the 60s.